Hi.
How you doing?
Good.
So earlier this year, we did 6 blind tastings here at Boundary Breaks. They were more than just a tasting. They were really
fun.
Yeah, they were fun, and they were actually a seminar.
Right. So we thought we would give you sort of a taste of each of those seminars.
So the first seminar we did focused on the 5 objective characteristics of wine. Those were sweetness, acidity, alcohol, tannin, and body.
Right. So first of all, let's think about sugars. Sugar is made from photosynthesis. They're the building blocks of everything the plant does. And
that sugar ends up in the grape itself. So when we
Right.
harvest those grapes, that sugar becomes the basis for the fermentation process. The yeast metabolize the sugar
Right.
and produce alcohol, and now you have a wine that is both rich in flavor as well as
Right.
containing some alcohol.
So sometimes people confuse sweetness with fruitiness, don't they?
They do. Sometimes we will serve a wine, they'll say that's sweet. Well, in fact, no, it's not sweet so much as it has great fruit flavor. If you think a banana, for instance, that's ripe,
Right.
that ripe banana may have a slightly bit more residual sugar, but what it really has is fruit flavor. Banana-es, bananas.
Right. Yep. So if I were to serve one of our wines to show what a wine without sugar is like, that would be more like the 90 extra dry or the 239 dry, and one with
a little bit more residual sugar would be the 198
198
reserve, for sure. So those two wines are at opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to
sugar
and sweetness.
Right.
Perfect.
So the second characteristic is acidity. And acidity is found in all fruit. It acts as a deterrent to things that might want to eat the fruit before it gets ripe.
Because they don't taste very good when they're overly acidic.
Right. And as the fruit ripens, they become less acidic.
Great. And Riesling is one of those grapes that's known for its acidity. And it's and in the winemaking process, you can produce wines that have a lot of balance to the acidity with a little bit of extra residual sugar, or you can make them a little bit more austere, where the acidity just knifes through and cuts through into the palate.
Right. And acids tend to balance out sugar.
They do.
Right.
They do. So what would be an example of an acidic wine and a less acidic wine?
So I would think an acidic wine would be something like a Sauvignon Blanc.
Okay, an austere,
Right.
taut Sauvignon Blanc.
Right.
Yeah.
And you might, on the other end, you might have an older Chardonnay, maybe something that seems a little buttery.
I see. So the acidity on that one is a little suppressed.
Suppressed.
It's a little rounder, a little more luscious.
Right.
Great.
Yep.
So the third characteristic that we studied in this blind tasting seminar is alcohol. And alcohol is a byproduct of the fermentation process. That's where yeast eat sugars and generate alcohol. And the rate, or the way the yeast does this, can actually be shown on a graph where you see the sugars going down as the alcohol is going up.
And you can actually measure the amount of alcohol in your own body by feeling where the burn is when you drink. If it's really a lot of alcohol, you'll feel it down in your chest. And in our blind tasting, we did vodka shots to prove that.
Yes, and those burn.
Those burned. So for wines, what we tried was a Vino Verde, which is early picked low alcohol wine, and
a sherry.
A sherry,
yeah.
right,
So
which is a fortified wine.
So we had a very light, low alcohol wine with a very rich, heavier, higher alcohol wine.
Right,
It was
exactly.
great.
It was very good.
Okay.
So the fourth characteristic are tannins, and tannins are very large, complex molecules that probably have some defense mechanism. They are found in the stems, seeds, and skins of grapes.
And actually, all wines have tannins in them, particularly the ones that are aged in oak. White wines typically are made in a way where you minimize the presence of the tannins.
Right. In your mouth, tannins will bond with the proteins in your saliva and make your mouth feel dry. And as wines age, those very, very large molecules stick together and fall out of solution and make the wine feel less astringent and softer.
So what would be a good example of two
more or less tannic wines. I think of a less tannic red wine as a Pinot Noir, for
Yeah,
instance.
that sounds good, but a very tannic red wine would be a Tannat. So they'll just dry your mouth right out.
Okay. Okay, we've come to the fifth and last characteristic of wine that we are here to discuss today, and that is body. Body is really the weight that you feel on your palate of the wine. And a good example of how a liquid can have more or less body would be if you think of milk with heavy cream, whole milk, and skim milk. The heavy cream clearly has more body than either the whole milk or the skim milk.
Right. So any addition of sugar, alcohol, or tannin will make a wine feel heavier, but if you increase the amount of acidity, then it will lower the body, it'll have a lighter body.
I see. And what would be two good examples of wines with either a lot of body or ones with less body?
So this is a place where you could take two Chardonnays and
Okay.
have an unoaked Chardonnay and an oaky Chardonnay.
So the unoaked Chardonnay is going to be a little higher in acidity. It's going to have,
Right.
it's going to strike your palate as being a little bit lower in body or weight on your palate.
Right.
A little bit more refreshing.
Right. And the oaky Chardonnay will have a full body and a little heavier weight.
A little more luscious, a little rounder, a little bit bigger character to it.
Right.
Body. So those were the 5 characteristics of wine we covered in our first blind tasting earlier this year.
And it was we used that information in the rest of the tastings that we did too. So it was a good setup for those.
And it was fun, too. And we didn't just taste our wine. We tasted wines from around the country, from around the Finger
world,
Lakes, and
right.
from around the world, too.
Right.
Yeah.
Usually we serve about 8 wines, maybe something else.
Takes about an hour and a half to go through a session.
Right. It's lots of fun.
We have 20, 25 people at each one. It's a great time.
Right. Good way to spend the afternoon.
So, Diana, keep up the good work.
Thanks, Bruce.